Question 1. The risk matrix shows a high-impact, high-likelihood cybersecurity incident has been detected. The incident response team is faced with a critical decision on how to proceed immediately. Which of the following approaches best aligns with a structured and professional incident handling methodology? Option A. Immediately initiate system restoration to minimize downtime, assuming the threat has been neutralized. Option B. Make an educated guess about the incident's scope and deploy resources based on that assumption. Option C. Prioritize evidence preservation and containment of the incident before any significant system changes are made. Option D. Focus solely on informing all external stakeholders about the incident to manage public perception. The correct answer is A. Immediately initiate system restoration to minimize downtime, assuming the threat has been neutralized. Explanation. The risk matrix shows a critical incident with a high likelihood of occurrence and a high potential impact on the organization's operations and reputation. This scenario is professionally challenging because incident handlers must balance the immediate need to contain and eradicate the threat with the long-term implications of their decisions, including legal, regulatory, and ethical considerations. The pressure to act quickly can lead to hasty choices that might not align with established incident response frameworks or legal obligations. The correct approach involves a structured decision-making process that prioritizes evidence preservation, containment, eradication, and recovery, while adhering to the incident response plan and relevant legal and regulatory requirements. This aligns with best professional practices for incident handling, which emphasize a systematic and documented approach. Specifically, for the 212-89 EC Council Certified Incident Handler exam, this would involve following the incident response lifecycle as outlined in industry best practices and potentially referencing general principles of data protection and breach notification, if applicable to the incident's nature, without specific jurisdictional laws being mandated for this question. The focus is on a universally accepted, methodical response. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate system restoration without proper evidence collection would fail to meet the requirements of a thorough investigation. This could lead to the loss of crucial forensic data, hindering the ability to understand the root cause, identify perpetrators, and prevent future occurrences. Ethically, this demonstrates a lack of diligence and professionalism. Another incorrect approach, such as solely focusing on communication with stakeholders without initiating containment measures, would leave the organization vulnerable to further damage and could be seen as a dereliction of duty in protecting assets. A third incorrect approach, which involves making assumptions about the incident's scope without verification, risks misallocating resources and potentially exacerbating the problem. These approaches lack the systematic rigor expected of a certified incident handler and could lead to regulatory scrutiny if specific data protection laws were in play. Though the question focuses on the framework itself, professionals should use a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the incident's context, assessing its impact, and then systematically applying the incident response plan. This involves clear communication, delegation of tasks, and continuous evaluation of the situation. The framework should guide actions through phases of preparation, identification, containment, eradication, recovery, and lessons learned, ensuring that each step is documented and justified. Question 2. Operational review demonstrates a critical data exfiltration event has occurred, potentially exposing sensitive customer information. The incident response team has successfully isolated the affected systems, preventing further data loss. However, the full extent of the exfiltration and the specific data compromised are still under investigation. Given the potential for significant regulatory penalties and reputational damage, what is the most prudent next step for the incident handler? Option A. Attempt to downplay the severity of the incident internally and externally until a complete understanding of the impact is achieved, to avoid premature panic and regulatory intervention. Option B. Prioritize a complete forensic analysis to definitively identify all compromised data before any external communication or legal consultation to ensure accuracy. Option C. Immediately engage legal counsel and initiate the process for regulatory notification, while continuing the forensic investigation to determine the full scope of the breach. Option D. Halt all further investigation and focus solely on strengthening security perimeters to prevent future incidents, assuming the current breach is contained. The correct answer is C. Immediately engage legal counsel and initiate the process for regulatory notification, while continuing the forensic investigation to determine the full scope of the breach. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in incident response, balancing the immediate need to contain a breach with the long-term implications of data handling and regulatory compliance. The critical factor is the potential exposure of sensitive customer data, which triggers specific legal and ethical obligations. The incident handler must make a rapid decision under pressure, knowing that either action or inaction carries significant risk. The challenge lies in selecting an approach that prioritizes both security and compliance, avoiding actions that could exacerbate the situation or lead to regulatory penalties. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a structured decision-making framework that prioritizes immediate containment while simultaneously initiating the process for regulatory notification and legal consultation. This aligns with best practices in incident response, which emphasize a phased approach. The immediate containment of the threat is paramount to prevent further damage. Simultaneously, engaging legal counsel and initiating the regulatory notification process ensures that all legal obligations are being met promptly. This proactive stance demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to transparency, which are crucial for maintaining trust and mitigating legal repercussions. The EC Council Certified Incident Handler Curriculum emphasizes a methodical approach to incident response, where immediate containment is followed by thorough investigation and appropriate reporting, all within the bounds of applicable regulations. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to solely focus on containment without considering the regulatory implications. This could lead to a situation where the breach is contained, but the organization fails to meet mandatory reporting deadlines, resulting in fines and reputational damage. Such an approach neglects the legal framework governing data breaches, which often mandates specific timelines for notification to affected individuals and regulatory bodies. Another incorrect approach is to immediately halt all operations and initiate a full-scale forensic investigation without first containing the immediate threat. While a thorough investigation is vital, delaying containment can allow the attacker to cause further damage or exfiltrate more data, thereby increasing the severity of the incident and the potential legal ramifications. This approach prioritizes investigation over immediate damage control, which is contrary to the core principles of incident response. A third incorrect approach is to attempt to conceal the breach or downplay its severity to avoid immediate regulatory scrutiny. This is not only unethical, but also carries severe legal penalties. Most jurisdictions have strict laws against obstruction of justice and failure to report significant security incidents. Such a tactic would likely be discovered during subsequent investigations, leading to more severe consequences than prompt and honest reporting. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that integrates immediate tactical responses with strategic legal and regulatory considerations. This involves 1. Initial assessment, quickly understanding the scope and impact of the incident. 2. Containment, implementing measures to stop the ongoing breach. 3. Escalation, notifying relevant internal stakeholders, including legal and compliance teams. 4. Investigation, conducting a thorough forensic analysis to understand the root cause and extent of the breach. 5. Notification, fulfilling all legal and regulatory notification requirements. 6. Remediation, implementing measures to prevent recurrence. This structured approach ensures that all critical aspects of incident response are addressed systematically, prioritizing both security and compliance. Question 3. During the evaluation of a critical security incident involving a suspected data breach, the incident response team has identified the affected systems and has a preliminary understanding of the attack vector. The primary business objective is to restore affected services as quickly as possible to minimize financial losses. Which of the following approaches best balances the immediate need for service restoration with the long-term requirements of forensic investigation and regulatory compliance? Option A. Halt all restoration efforts until a complete forensic image of all affected systems can be acquired and analyzed, regardless of the duration. Option B. Immediately isolate and rebuild affected systems to restore services, documenting the actions taken as thoroughly as possible during the restoration process. Option C. Initiate a full system wipe and reinstallation of all operating systems and applications across the entire network, as a precautionary measure before any service restoration. Option D. Proceed with service restoration using standard recovery procedures, assuming the breach is contained and no further evidence is critical for the investigation. Correct answer is B. Immediately isolate and rebuild affected systems to restore services, documenting the actions taken as thoroughly as possible during the restoration process. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because the incident handler must balance immediate containment and eradication efforts with the need for thorough evidence preservation and adherence to established incident response frameworks. The pressure to restore services quickly can lead to hasty decisions that compromise the integrity of the investigation, potentially impacting legal proceedings or regulatory compliance. The incident handler must also consider the potential impact on business operations and stakeholder communication, all while operating under the strict guidelines of the 212-89 EC Council Certified Incident Handler Curriculum, which emphasizes a structured and evidence-based approach. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and documented process. By following a recognized decision-making framework, such as a phased incident response model, e.g., preparation, identification, containment, eradication, recovery, lessons learned, the handler ensures that all critical steps are considered. This methodical approach facilitates accurate evidence collection, minimizes the risk of evidence spoliation, and provides a clear audit trail for post-incident review and regulatory reporting. Adherence to established protocols, as implicitly required by the certification, ensures that actions are justifiable and defensible, aligning with the principles of due diligence and professional responsibility. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on rapid service restoration without adequate evidence preservation would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could violate data protection regulations, if applicable to the jurisdiction implied by the exam. Though not explicitly stated, the principles of evidence integrity are universal in incident response. By potentially destroying or contaminating crucial evidence needed for forensic analysis or legal action, it demonstrates a lack of understanding of the incident handler's role in not just fixing the problem, but also in understanding its root cause and impact. Another incorrect approach, such as delaying containment to gather more information than is immediately necessary, could lead to further damage, data loss, and increased operational disruption, failing the core objective of incident response to mitigate harm. This also shows poor judgment in prioritizing actions. A third incorrect approach, like proceeding without proper authorization or documentation, undermines accountability and transparency, which are fundamental ethical and professional requirements in any incident response scenario. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that integrates incident response phases with evidence handling procedures. This involves 1. Initial assessment, quickly understanding the scope and impact to determine the urgency of containment. 2. Prioritization, balancing immediate containment needs with the imperative to preserve evidence. 3. Documentation, meticulously recording all actions taken, observations, and decisions. 4. Forensic readiness, ensuring that containment and eradication steps are performed in a manner that does not destroy or alter critical evidence. 5. Communication, keeping relevant stakeholders informed according to established protocols. This structured thinking process ensures that decisions are not reactive, but are informed by a comprehensive understanding of the incident and its implications. Question 4. Stakeholder feedback indicates that while the recent data breach was contained effectively, there's a perception that the organization is not learning sufficiently from these events to prevent future occurrences. Which of the following approaches best addresses this feedback by optimizing the incident response process? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive post-incident review to identify root causes, document lessons learned, and propose specific, actionable improvements to policies, procedures, and training. Option B. Focus on updating the incident response plan with new technical containment steps based on the observed attack vectors. Option C. Archive all incident reports and move on to the next operational priority. Option D. Immediately deploy the latest security software to bolster defenses against the type of attack experienced. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive post-incident review to identify root causes, document lessons learned, and propose specific, actionable improvements to policies, procedures, and training. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for incident response with the long-term strategic goal of process improvement. The incident handler must quickly contain and remediate the breach, while simultaneously identifying systemic weaknesses that contributed to it. Failure to address the root cause can lead to recurring incidents, increased costs, and erosion of stakeholder trust. The pressure to demonstrate immediate results can sometimes overshadow the importance of thorough analysis and sustainable solutions. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a structured post-incident review that prioritizes identifying and documenting lessons learned. This aligns with best practices in incident management, emphasizing continuous improvement. Specifically, EC Council's Certified Incident Handler curriculum stresses the importance of a post-incident analysis phase to refine procedures, update security controls, and enhance training. This proactive measure directly contributes to optimizing future incident response capabilities, reducing the likelihood and impact of similar events. It also demonstrates a commitment to organizational resilience and adherence to a mature incident response lifecycle, which is often a requirement or expectation in regulatory frameworks that mandate robust security practices. Incorrect approaches analysis, focusing solely on immediate containment and eradication without a formal post-incident review, fails to address the underlying causes, leading to potential recurrence and violating the principle of continuous improvement inherent in effective incident handling. This approach neglects the opportunity to learn from the incident and strengthen defenses, which can be seen as a failure to exercise due diligence in protecting organizational assets. Implementing new security tools without a thorough analysis of the incident's root cause and the effectiveness of existing processes is a reactive and potentially inefficient use of resources. It risks addressing symptoms rather than the disease, and may not align with the organization's overall security strategy or budget, potentially leading to compliance issues if security investments are not justified by risk assessments. Documenting the incident response steps but not actively seeking feedback or proposing improvements to the process overlooks the critical learning aspect of incident handling. This static approach stagnates the incident response capability, failing to adapt to evolving threats and organizational changes, which is a deviation from best practices for process optimization. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a phased approach to incident response that includes a dedicated post-incident analysis phase. This involves not only documenting the technical details of the incident, but also critically evaluating the effectiveness of the response plan, communication channels, and resource allocation. Seeking feedback from all involved stakeholders, including technical teams, management, and potentially legal or compliance departments, is crucial. The decision-making process should prioritize identifying actionable insights that can lead to concrete improvements in policies, procedures, and technology. This iterative cycle of response, review, and refinement is fundamental to building a resilient and effective incident handling capability. Question 5. The audit findings indicate a significant delay in the response to a simulated ransomware attack due to ambiguity in the incident response plan's decision-making framework regarding when to escalate to senior management and external stakeholders. Which of the following actions best reflects a professionally sound decision-making process in such a scenario? Option A. Engage external cybersecurity forensic specialists to conduct a full investigation before any internal reporting or escalation occurs. Option B. Immediately initiate the predefined escalation matrix based on the initial indicators of a ransomware attack, informing relevant internal departments and senior management for coordinated decision-making. Option C. Proceed with attempting to fully eradicate the threat and restore systems before notifying any management or external parties, to avoid causing unnecessary alarm. Option D. Rely solely on the technical team's assessment of the threat's severity and potential impact, without involving business unit leaders or executive management. The correct answer is B. Immediately initiate the predefined escalation matrix based on the initial indicators of a ransomware attack, informing relevant internal departments and senior management for coordinated decision-making. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a critical gap in the incident response plan's decision-making framework, specifically concerning the escalation and communication protocols during a simulated ransomware attack. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires immediate, high-stakes decisions under pressure, with potentially severe consequences for business operations, data integrity, and regulatory compliance. The effectiveness of the incident response hinges on a structured, yet adaptable decision-making process that balances speed with accuracy and adherence to established guidelines. The correct approach involves activating the predefined decision-making framework, which prioritizes information gathering, impact assessment, and stakeholder notification according to established severity levels. This aligns with best professional practices for incident handling, emphasizing a systematic and documented process. For the EC Council Certified Incident Handler 212-89 exam, this implies adherence to general incident response methodologies and ethical considerations, even without specific jurisdictional regulations being explicitly stated for this question. The framework ensures that decisions are not arbitrary, but are based on a logical progression of steps, minimizing panic and maximizing efficiency. An incorrect approach of immediately engaging external legal counsel without a preliminary internal assessment fails to leverage the incident response team's expertise and established protocols. This can lead to unnecessary costs and delays, and potentially misinformed legal advice if the full scope of the incident is not yet understood. Ethically, it bypasses the structured incident response process designed to manage such events efficiently. Another incorrect approach of solely relying on the IT department to contain the threat without involving management or relevant business units overlooks the broader business impact and the need for executive decision-making, especially concerning potential data exfiltration or operational downtime. This violates the principle of integrated incident response, which requires cross-functional collaboration. Finally, an incorrect approach of waiting for definitive proof of data exfiltration before initiating any communication or escalation delays critical actions and can lead to significant reputational damage and regulatory penalties if data has indeed been compromised. This reactive stance is contrary to proactive incident management and the principle of timely notification where applicable. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that includes 1. Incident identification and verification, 2. Initial assessment and triage, 3. Containment and eradication, 4. Recovery, and 5. Post-incident activity. Within this, decision points for escalation and communication should be clearly defined based on impact and severity, ensuring that all relevant parties are informed and involved at the appropriate stages. Question 6. Regulatory review indicates that following a significant security breach, an incident handler must decide on the immediate course of action. The breach has impacted critical business systems, leading to a halt in operations. While the business is demanding immediate restoration to mitigate financial losses, the incident handler recognizes the potential for critical evidence to be lost if systems are brought back online without proper forensic procedures. What is the most appropriate decision-making approach in this scenario? Option A. Immediately restore all affected systems to minimize business downtime and financial losses, deferring forensic analysis until after operations are fully resumed. Option B. Halt all system restoration efforts indefinitely until a complete and exhaustive forensic analysis of all compromised systems is finalized. Option C. Prioritize the immediate restoration of all business-critical systems, regardless of the impact on forensic evidence preservation, to meet business demands. Option D. Initiate a phased restoration of unaffected or cleaned systems while simultaneously conducting forensic imaging and analysis of compromised systems. Correct answer is D. Initiate a phased restoration of unaffected or cleaned systems while simultaneously conducting forensic imaging and analysis of compromised systems. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in incident response where conflicting priorities arise due to the potential impact on business operations versus the need for thorough forensic investigation. The incident handler must balance the immediate need to restore services to minimize financial and reputational damage with the imperative to preserve evidence for potential legal action, regulatory compliance, and future threat intelligence. The pressure to make a rapid decision under duress, with incomplete information, is a significant professional challenge. The decision maker must consider the potential consequences of both premature system restoration evidence loss and prolonged downtime business impact. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes the preservation of evidence while initiating a phased restoration process. This aligns with best practices in incident handling, emphasizing the integrity of the investigation. By isolating affected systems and initiating a controlled restoration of unaffected or clean systems, the incident handler minimizes business disruption without compromising the forensic investigation. This approach respects the need for evidence integrity, a cornerstone of regulatory compliance, e.g., data breach notification laws, industry-specific regulations requiring evidence preservation for audits and legal proceedings. It demonstrates a commitment to a methodical and defensible incident response process, which is crucial for maintaining trust with stakeholders and regulatory bodies. Incorrect approaches analysis. Immediately restoring all systems without proper forensic imaging or analysis is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This action would likely lead to the destruction or alteration of critical evidence, hindering any subsequent investigation, legal action, or regulatory audit. It violates the principle of evidence preservation, which is often mandated by law and industry standards. Furthermore, it could lead to a recurrence of the incident if the root cause is not identified and remediated. Focusing solely on restoring business operations without any consideration for evidence preservation is also a failure. While business continuity is important, it cannot come at the expense of legal and regulatory obligations. This approach demonstrates a lack of understanding of the broader implications of an incident, including potential liabilities and compliance requirements. It prioritizes short-term gains over long-term integrity and accountability. Delaying restoration indefinitely to conduct an exhaustive forensic analysis before any system is brought back online is also problematic. While thoroughness is important, an indefinite delay can cause severe business disruption, leading to significant financial losses and reputational damage. This approach fails to balance the competing demands of incident response and business continuity, potentially leading to greater overall harm. It may also be seen as an inefficient use of resources and could draw criticism from management and stakeholders for an overly protracted response. Professional reasoning. Incident handlers should employ a structured decision-making framework that incorporates risk assessment, stakeholder communication, and adherence to established incident response plans and playbooks. This framework should guide them to 1. Assess the incident's impact and scope. 2. Prioritize evidence preservation. 3. Develop a phased restoration plan that balances business needs with forensic requirements. 4. Document all decisions and actions meticulously. 5. Communicate effectively with relevant stakeholders throughout the process. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are justifiable, compliant, and aligned with organizational objectives and regulatory mandates. Question 7. Strategic planning requires an incident handler to consider the potential impact of their actions on both evidence integrity and business operations during a critical security incident. Given a scenario where a ransomware attack has encrypted key servers, what is the most prudent course of action to ensure compliance with U.S. regulatory frameworks and maintain professional integrity? Option A. Prioritize full forensic imaging of all affected systems before any restoration attempts, even if it means significant business downtime. Option B. Immediately initiate system restoration from clean backups while simultaneously beginning a forensic imaging of affected systems for later analysis, ensuring all steps are documented. Option C. Attempt to decrypt the files using available tools without involving legal or management, and only then consider evidence preservation if decryption is unsuccessful. Option D. Proceed with restoring systems from backups without any forensic imaging, assuming the backups are clean and the incident is contained. Correct answer is B. Immediately initiate system restoration from clean backups while simultaneously beginning a forensic imaging of affected systems for later analysis, ensuring all steps are documented. Explanation. This scenario presents a professionally challenging situation because the incident handler must balance immediate containment and eradication efforts with the need to preserve evidence for potential legal proceedings and regulatory compliance. The pressure to restore services quickly can conflict with the meticulous steps required for forensic integrity. Careful judgment is required to avoid actions that could compromise either the investigation or the business's operational continuity. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a structured, documented decision-making process aligned with established incident response frameworks and regulatory expectations. Specifically, for a U.S.-based organization, This would involve adhering to guidelines such as those outlined by NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, particularly SB 800-61, which emphasizes the importance of evidence preservation and chain of custody. This approach ensures that actions taken are justifiable, repeatable, and defensible, minimizing legal and reputational risks. It also aligns with the ethical obligation of an incident handler to act with due diligence and competence. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate system restoration without proper evidence collection would fail to meet regulatory requirements for data breach notification and investigation, potentially leading to fines and legal repercussions under laws like HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley Act. Depending on the industry, it also violates ethical principles of thoroughness and accountability. Another incorrect approach that focuses solely on evidence collection to the detriment of critical business operations, without a clear risk assessment and stakeholder communication, would be professionally unsound. While evidence is crucial, an incident handler must also consider the business impact and engage in risk-based decision-making, which often involves consulting with management and legal counsel to determine acceptable levels of downtime versus the urgency of evidence preservation. This failure to balance competing priorities can lead to significant business losses and erode trust. A third incorrect approach that involves making unilateral decisions about evidence handling without consulting legal counsel or management would be a significant ethical and professional failure. Incident response often has legal implications, and decisions regarding evidence can impact litigation, regulatory investigations, and public relations. Such actions demonstrate a lack of understanding of the broader organizational context and potential consequences. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that involves 1. Incident assessment, quickly understanding the scope and impact. 2. Risk analysis, evaluating the potential harm to the organization and its stakeholders. 3. Stakeholder consultation, engaging with legal management and IT teams. 4. Evidence preservation strategy, developing a plan that balances operational needs with forensic requirements. 5. Documentation, meticulously recording all actions and decisions. 6. Execution and monitoring, implementing the plan and continuously assessing its effectiveness. This structured approach ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with organizational objectives and regulatory obligations. Question 8. The risk matrix shows several active security incidents. One incident involves a widespread but low-impact malware infection across non-critical workstations. Another involves a targeted ransomware attack on a single, mission-critical database server. A third incident is a denial of service, DoS, attack against a public-facing but non-essential marketing website. Fourth incident is a suspected data exfiltration attempt from a server containing sensitive customer personally identifiable information, PI, which incident requires the most immediate and highest priority for incident response and remediation efforts. Option A, the denial of service DoS, attack against a public-facing but non-essential marketing website. Option B, the widespread but low-impact malware infection across non-critical workstations. Option C, the suspected data exfiltration attempt from a server containing sensitive customer personally identifiable information, PI. Option D, the targeted ransomware attack on a single, mission-critical database server. The correct answer is C, the suspected data exfiltration attempt from a server containing sensitive customer personally identifiable information, PI. Explanation: this scenario presents a common challenge in incident response, prioritizing remediation efforts when faced with multiple, potentially impactful security events. The professional challenge lies in accurately assessing the true business impact of each incident, rather than solely relying on technical severity or initial perceived threat. This requires a nuanced understanding of how an incident, even if technically minor, could disrupt critical business functions, lead to regulatory noncompliance, or damage reputation. Careful judgment is needed to allocate limited resources effectively. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it aligns with the core principles of incident response and risk management, which are implicitly guided by frameworks like those underpinning the EC Council Certified Incident Handler certification. Focusing on business impact ensures that the most critical assets and operations are protected first, minimizing overall organizational harm. This proactive and business-centric prioritization is essential for demonstrating due diligence and maintaining stakeholder confidence. It also directly supports the goal of restoring normal operations as quickly and efficiently as possible, a key objective of any incident handler. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the number of affected systems fails to consider the criticality of those systems. A single critical server outage could have a far greater business impact than a widespread but less critical system compromise. This approach is ethically and regulatorily deficient, as it risks neglecting high-impact events due to a superficial quantitative assessment, potentially leading to significant financial losses, reputational damage, or breaches of data protection regulations if sensitive information is compromised on a critical system. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes incidents based on the perceived sophistication of the attack vector overlooks the actual damage or potential damage. A simple, unsophisticated attack that successfully compromises a critical system can be far more damaging than a complex attack that is quickly contained with minimal impact. This approach is professionally unsound as it can lead to misallocation of resources, allowing high-impact, low-sophistication incidents to fester, while resources are diverted to technically interesting but less damaging events. This can also lead to regulatory scrutiny if the organization fails to adequately address the business impact of an incident, regardless of its technical complexity. A third incorrect approach that solely considers the immediate technical severity without considering the broader business context is also flawed. While technical severity is important, it is only one component of the overall impact. An incident that is technically severe but affects a non-critical system or has a limited scope might be less urgent than a technically less severe incident that affects a core business process or a large volume of sensitive data. This approach fails to provide a holistic view of risk and can lead to inefficient resource allocation, potentially leaving the organization vulnerable to greater harm. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured impact assessment that considers multiple dimensions: business criticality of affected assets, potential financial losses, reputational damage, legal and regulatory implications, and operational disruption. Incident handlers should leverage established incident response plans and business continuity plans to inform their prioritization. Collaboration with business stakeholders is crucial to gain a comprehensive understanding of the potential impact. The goal is to move beyond a purely technical view to a business-aligned risk management perspective. Question 9. Implementation of a rapid, preliminary impact assessment to guide immediate containment actions, followed by a more detailed analysis as the incident response progresses, is the most appropriate initial step following the detection of a significant data exfiltration event. Option A. Assume the impact is negligible and focus solely on restoring normal operations, deferring any detailed impact assessment until after the system recovery. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive forensic analysis of all affected systems before initiating any containment measures to ensure a complete understanding of the breach's technical scope. Option C. Immediately isolate all potentially affected systems without any initial assessment of business criticality or data sensitivity to prevent further spread. Option D. Perform an initial, high-level assessment of critical systems and sensitive data likely impacted to inform immediate containment priorities, followed by a deeper dive into the full scope and business impact. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive forensic analysis of all affected systems before initiating any containment measures to ensure a complete understanding of the breach's technical scope. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in incident response, balancing the need for rapid containment with the requirement for thorough impact assessment. The professional challenge lies in the inherent tension between speed and accuracy. A rushed assessment can lead to underestimation of the breach's scope, resulting in inadequate remediation and potential recurrence. Conversely, an overly prolonged assessment can delay critical containment actions, allowing the incident to spread further and cause greater damage. The incident handler must exercise sound judgment, leveraging available information to make informed decisions under pressure, while adhering to established protocols. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a phased impact assessment that begins with immediate, high-level data gathering to inform initial containment strategies, followed by a more detailed analysis as the situation stabilizes. This aligns with best practices in incident handling, which emphasize a structured, iterative process. By focusing on identifying critical systems and data immediately affected, the incident handler can prioritize containment efforts on the most vulnerable areas. This approach is ethically sound as it aims to minimize harm to the organization and its stakeholders by addressing the most significant risks first. From a regulatory perspective, this phased approach allows for timely reporting and compliance with notification requirements, as initial impact can be communicated even before a full forensic analysis is complete. It demonstrates a commitment to due diligence and responsible incident management. Incorrect approaches analysis, focusing solely on technical indicators without considering business criticality, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach risks overlooking the true impact on sensitive data or critical business operations, leading to inadequate remediation and potential noncompliance with data protection regulations. E.g., if specific PII or financial data is compromised but not identified as a priority, it also fails to meet the ethical obligation to protect the organization's assets and reputation. Delaying all impact assessment until a complete forensic investigation is concluded is another critical failure. This approach is professionally unacceptable because it unnecessarily prolongs the incident's potential damage and increases the risk of data loss or system compromise. It violates the principle of timely response and can lead to severe financial and reputational damage, potentially triggering regulatory penalties for delayed breach notification. Assuming the impact is minimal without any initial assessment is a gross dereliction of duty. This approach demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the potential consequences of a security incident. It is ethically reprehensible and would almost certainly lead to regulatory noncompliance, as organizations have a legal and ethical obligation to investigate and understand the scope of security breaches. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based phased approach to impact assessment. This involves 1. Initial triage. Quickly identify the type of incident and the most likely affected system/data. 2. Prioritization. Determine the business criticality of affected assets and data sensitivity. 3. Containment support. Use initial impact findings to guide immediate containment actions. 4. Detailed analysis. Conduct thorough forensic and business impact analysis as the incident is brought under control. 5. Reporting and remediation. Document findings and implement comprehensive remediation strategies. This structured decision-making process ensures that resources are allocated effectively, regulatory obligations are met, and the organization's interests are protected. Question 10. The control framework reveals a significant data exfiltration event impacting a customer database. Which of the following approaches to impact assessment is most aligned with professional incident handling best practices and regulatory expectations for protecting organizational operations and data integrity? Option A. Focus on identifying the critical business functions that rely on the compromised customer database and assess the potential disruption to those functions, including data integrity, availability, and confidentiality. Option B. Prioritize understanding the specific vulnerabilities exploited and the technical depth of the attacker's access, delaying business impact assessment until a full technical root cause analysis is complete. Option C. Immediately begin forensic analysis of all systems within the network to identify the full extent of any potential compromise, regardless of their connection to the initial incident. Option D. Initiate a broad communication campaign to all employees about the incident, without a clear understanding of the specific business impact, to ensure transparency. The correct answer is B. Prioritize understanding the specific vulnerabilities exploited and the technical depth of the attacker's access, delaying business impact assessment until a full technical root cause analysis is complete. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent uncertainty and potential for cascading impacts following a security incident. The incident handler must quickly assess the business ramifications without complete information, balancing the need for rapid response with the requirement for accurate impact evaluation. The pressure to provide actionable intelligence to stakeholders, who may have varying levels of technical understanding and risk tolerance, adds to the complexity. The challenge lies in translating technical findings into business-relevant terms and prioritizing remediation efforts based on potential harm. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach focusing on identifying critical business functions and the systems supporting them, represents best professional practice because it aligns directly with the core objective of incident response, minimizing business disruption and financial loss. This methodology prioritizes understanding the what matters most to the organization by mapping the incident's technical scope to the business processes it affects. Incident handlers can effectively communicate the severity of the situation to leadership. This allows for informed decision-making regarding resource allocation, communication strategies, and the urgency of containment and eradication efforts. This aligns with the principles of business continuity and disaster recovery, which are often implicitly or explicitly mandated by regulatory frameworks that require organizations to protect their operations and customer data. For example, in a U.S. context, regulations like HIPAA for healthcare or SOX for financial reporting implicitly require organizations to understand and mitigate the impact of incidents on their ability to comply with these regulations and maintain operational integrity. Incorrect approaches analysis, an approach that solely focuses on the technical severity of the exploit without considering its business context, is professionally unacceptable. This fails to address the fundamental purpose of incident response, which is to protect the organization's assets and operations. It can lead to misallocation of resources, where technically complex but low-impact issues receive undue attention, while critical business functions remain vulnerable. This can result in regulatory noncompliance if the incident affects protected data or critical services, leading to potential fines and reputational damage. An approach that delays impact assessment until all technical details are fully understood is also professionally flawed. While thoroughness is important, an extended delay in assessing business impact can allow an incident to escalate, causing greater damage and increasing the likelihood of regulatory violations. The principle of time is of the essence in incident response, necessitates a proactive and iterative impact assessment process, even with incomplete technical data. This can lead to significant business losses and a failure to meet reporting deadlines mandated by various regulations. An approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or assumptions about impact, rather than a structured assessment, is unprofessional and risky. This can lead to underestimating or overestimating the severity of the incident, resulting in inappropriate response strategies. Such an approach lacks the rigor required for effective incident management and can expose the organization to significant legal and financial liabilities if the true impact is not accurately understood and addressed. This can be seen as a failure to exercise due diligence, a common ethical and regulatory expectation. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured risk-based approach to impact assessment. This involves 1. Rapidly identifying the scope of the incident and the affected systems. 2. Immediately correlating affected systems with critical business functions. 3. Quantifying potential business impacts, financial, operational, reputational, legal/regulatory. 4. Communicating these impacts clearly and concisely to relevant stakeholders. 5. Iteratively refining the impact assessment as more information becomes available. This process ensures that response efforts are aligned with business priorities and regulatory obligations, fostering effective decision-making under pressure. Question 11. Process analysis reveals that a critical server hosting customer payment information has experienced an unauthorized access event. Initial reports suggest a potential data exfiltration, but the extent and nature of the data accessed are unclear. Which of the following represents the most prudent and professional approach to managing this incident? Option A. Immediately initiate a comprehensive impact assessment by gathering evidence of access data, identifying affected customer segments, and quantifying potential financial and reputational damage, while simultaneously implementing containment measures. Option B. Rely on the initial, limited report and implement only basic security hardening on the affected server, assuming that the unauthorized access was superficial and did not result in significant data loss. Option C. Focus solely on isolating the compromised server and eradicating the threat, deferring any detailed impact assessment until after the technical remediation is fully complete. Option D. Assume the worst-case scenario, immediately halting all related services to prevent further compromise and notifying all potentially affected customers and regulatory bodies, as per the most stringent data breach protocols. The correct answer is A. Immediately initiate a comprehensive impact assessment by gathering evidence of access data, identifying affected customer segments, and quantifying potential financial and reputational damage, while simultaneously implementing containment measures. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in incident response, determining the scope and impact of a security incident when initial information is incomplete and potentially misleading. The professional challenge lies in balancing the urgency of containment with the need for accurate impact assessment to inform remediation and reporting. Misjudging the impact can lead to under-resourcing the response, failing to meet regulatory notification deadlines, or overreacting and causing unnecessary business disruption. Careful judgment is required to prioritize actions based on potential harm to the organization and its stakeholders. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and evidence-based impact assessment. This begins with identifying the affected systems and data, understanding the nature of the compromise, e.g., data exfiltration, system disruption, unauthorized access, and then quantifying the potential business and operational consequences. This aligns with best practices for incident handling, which emphasize understanding the what, where, when, and how of an incident to determine its severity. For a certified incident handler, this means applying a structured methodology to gather facts, analyze their implications, and categorize the incident's impact, e.g., low, medium, high, critical, based on predefined criteria. This structured approach ensures that response efforts are proportionate to the risk and that all necessary stakeholders are informed appropriately, adhering to the principles of due diligence and responsible incident management. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to immediately assume the worst-case scenario and initiate a full-scale, resource-intensive response without sufficient evidence. This can lead to significant operational disruption, wasted resources, and a loss of credibility if the actual impact is minor. Ethically, it fails to demonstrate proportionality and could be seen as negligent if it causes undue harm to business operations. Another incorrect approach is to downplay the incident and adopt a minimal response based on initial, potentially incomplete observations. This is a critical regulatory and ethical failure. If sensitive data was indeed compromised or critical systems were affected, failing to conduct a thorough impact assessment could lead to noncompliance with data breach notification laws, if applicable within the exam's jurisdiction. Though not explicitly stated here, the principle of due diligence applies universally, and a failure to protect customer or organizational assets. This approach demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for potential harm. A third incorrect approach is to focus solely on technical containment without considering the broader business implications. While technical containment is crucial, an incident's true impact extends to financial losses, reputational damage, legal liabilities, and operational downtime. Ignoring these aspects means the incident response is incomplete and fails to address the full spectrum of potential harm, which is a deficiency in professional incident handling. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a phased approach to incident response, beginning with initial containment and then moving to a detailed impact assessment. This assessment should be iterative, refining understanding as more information becomes available. Key steps include identifying affected assets, determining the type and scope of compromise, evaluating potential data breaches, assessing operational disruption, and estimating financial and reputational damage. This structured process allows for informed decision-making regarding escalation, resource allocation, and communication, ensuring that the response is both effective and efficient, and aligns with organizational policies and any relevant regulatory obligations. Question 12. The control framework reveals that during a recent ransomware incident affecting customer databases, the incident response team is debating the immediate next steps. One faction advocates for rapid system restoration to minimize service disruption, while another emphasizes a thorough forensic analysis to precisely quantify the scope of data exfiltration before any system changes are made. A third group suggests prioritizing the eradication of the ransomware and then conducting a post-incident review of the impact, which approach best balances immediate containment needs with the imperative for accurate impact assessment and regulatory compliance in the context of potential data exfiltration. Option A. Focus on eradicating the ransomware from all systems and then perform a retrospective impact assessment after all operational functions have been restored. Option B. Conduct a detailed forensic analysis to determine the exact nature and extent of data exfiltration and identify all affected individuals before initiating system restoration or eradication. Option C. Immediately restore affected systems from clean backups to resume normal operations, and then conduct a high-level review of potential data loss. Option D. Rely on automated scanning tools to identify compromised files, and then proceed with system restoration, deferring a comprehensive impact assessment to a later stage. The correct answer is B. Conduct a detailed forensic analysis to determine the exact nature and extent of data exfiltration, and identify all affected individuals before initiating system restoration or eradication. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the incident handler must balance the immediate need to contain a data breach with the regulatory requirement to accurately assess the impact on affected individuals and the organization. The pressure to restore services quickly can lead to shortcuts in the impact assessment process, potentially resulting in underestimation of the breach's severity and non-compliance with reporting obligations. Careful judgment is required to ensure that containment efforts do not compromise the thoroughness of the impact assessment. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive impact assessment before full remediation. This aligns with the principles of responsible incident handling and regulatory compliance. Specifically, for the 212-89 EC Council Certified Incident Handler exam, which focuses on a U.S. regulatory environment, this approach is critical for adhering to laws like the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, for protected health information, or the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, GLBA, for financial information, both of which mandate specific notification procedures based on the nature and scope of the data compromised. A thorough impact assessment ensures that the correct parties are notified within the legally prescribed timeframes, and that the organization understands the full extent of potential harm to individuals, thereby mitigating legal and reputational damage. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately restoring affected systems without a detailed impact assessment. This is professionally unacceptable because it risks reintroducing vulnerabilities or failing to fully eradicate the threat. From a regulatory standpoint, this could lead to a secondary breach or a failure to identify all compromised data, resulting in noncompliance with breach notification laws. For instance, if sensitive personal information was exfiltrated, failing to identify this during the initial assessment means the organization might not fulfill its legal duty to notify affected individuals, leading to significant fines and legal repercussions under regulations like the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, or similar state-level data privacy laws. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on automated tools for impact assessment without human oversight. While automated tools are valuable, they may not capture the nuances of a complex attack or the specific context of the compromised data. This can lead to an incomplete or inaccurate assessment of the impact on individuals and the organization. Ethically and regulatorily, this is a failure because it can result in underreporting the breach's severity, leading to insufficient remediation efforts and inadequate notifications, thereby violating the spirit and letter of data protection regulations. A third incorrect approach is to delay the impact assessment until after all containment and eradication efforts are complete, focusing only on technical recovery. This is professionally unsound, as it postpones the critical step of understanding the consequences of the breach. Regulatory frameworks often have strict timelines for reporting breaches, which begin from the moment the breach is discovered and its potential impact is understood. Delaying the assessment means delaying the understanding of these impacts, potentially causing the organization to miss critical reporting deadlines, which is a direct violation of breach notification requirements under various U.S. federal and state laws. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a phased approach to incident response, where impact assessment is a distinct and critical phase that runs concurrently with or immediately follows initial containment. This involves understanding what data was accessed or exfiltrated, who was affected, and the potential harm. Decision-making should be guided by a risk-based methodology, prioritizing actions that protect individuals and the organization while ensuring compliance with all applicable regulations. This requires clear communication between technical teams, legal counsel, and management to ensure all aspects of the incident are addressed comprehensively, and in accordance with legal and ethical obligations. Question 13. Investigation of a suspected data exfiltration incident reveals that sensitive customer information may have been accessed. What is the most appropriate initial step in assessing the impact of this incident? Option A. Identify the specific types of customer data potentially compromised and the number of affected individuals. Option B. Assume the exfiltration was limited to non-sensitive internal data and proceed with standard cleanup. Option C. Begin drafting public statements to manage potential reputational damage. Option D. Immediately isolate all network segments that could have been involved in the exfiltration. The correct answer is A. Identify the specific types of customer data potentially compromised and the number of affected individuals. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professionally challenging situation due to the inherent uncertainty and potential for widespread impact following a data breach. The challenge lies in accurately assessing the scope and severity of the incident without complete information, while simultaneously needing to make critical decisions that affect the organization's operations, reputation, and legal standing. The pressure to act quickly must be balanced with the need for a thorough and accurate impact assessment to guide the incident response effectively. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and phased impact assessment that begins with identifying the affected systems and data, then quantifies the potential business and operational disruptions, and finally evaluates the legal and regulatory implications. This aligns with best practices in incident response, emphasizing a data-driven and risk-based methodology. By prioritizing the identification of critical assets and the potential for data exfiltration or compromise, incident handlers can effectively scope the incident. Understanding the potential for business disruption, including financial losses and reputational damage, allows for the allocation of appropriate resources and the development of effective mitigation strategies. Furthermore, considering the legal and regulatory landscape, such as data protection laws, ensures that the response is compliant and minimizes potential penalties. This methodical approach allows for informed decision-making and a more efficient and effective incident response. Incorrect approaches analysis. Focusing solely on the technical aspects of the breach without considering the broader business and legal implications represents a significant failure. This narrow perspective can lead to underestimating the true impact, resulting in insufficient resource allocation and an inadequate response. It fails to acknowledge that a breach's consequences extend far beyond the compromised systems. Prioritizing immediate containment without a preliminary impact assessment can lead to misdirected efforts. While containment is crucial, understanding the potential impact helps determine the most critical systems to prioritize for containment and informs the scope of containment actions. Acting without this understanding risks containing the wrong elements or causing unnecessary disruption to unaffected systems. Relying on assumptions about the breach's limited scope without verification is a critical ethical and professional failure. Assumptions can lead to a false sense of security and a delayed or insufficient response, potentially exacerbating the damage and increasing legal liability. This approach neglects the due diligence required in handling sensitive security incidents. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured incident response framework that mandates a comprehensive impact assessment early in the process. This involves establishing clear criteria for identifying critical assets, potential data types involved, and regulatory notification requirements. A risk-based approach, where the potential severity of impact dictates the urgency and resources allocated, is paramount. Continuous communication and collaboration among technical, legal, and business stakeholders are essential to ensure all facets of the impact are considered. Regular reevaluation of the impact assessment as new information becomes available is also a key component of effective incident management. Question 14. What factors determine the appropriate balance between immediate incident containment and the preservation of digital evidence in accordance with U.S. federal regulations and best practices for incident handlers? Option A. The convenience of data access for immediate analysis, the ease of data deletion to prevent further compromise, and the discretion of the incident response team. Option B. The criticality of affected systems, the potential for ongoing damage, the legal admissibility requirements for evidence, and the availability of forensic resources and expertise. Option C. The urgency of business operations, the cost of downtime, and the general understanding of cybersecurity threats without specific regard to legal frameworks. Option D. The speed at which affected systems can be restored to operational status, the perceived likelihood of prosecution, and the personal experience of the incident handler. The correct answer is B. The criticality of affected systems, the potential for ongoing damage, the legal admissibility requirements for evidence, and the availability of forensic resources and expertise. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professionally challenging situation due to the inherent tension between the need for rapid incident containment and the legal obligation to preserve evidence for potential prosecution or regulatory scrutiny. The incident handler must balance immediate operational needs with long-term forensic integrity, all while operating within the strict confines of U.S. federal law and relevant cybersecurity regulations. The pressure to restore services quickly can lead to actions that inadvertently compromise the chain of custody or destroy critical evidence, which has significant legal and financial repercussions. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a systematic, legally compliant process for evidence preservation. This aligns with the principles of digital forensics and incident response mandated by U.S. federal law, such as the Stored Communications Act and the Federal Rules of Evidence, which govern the admissibility of digital evidence. A documented, repeatable process ensures that evidence is collected, handled, and stored in a manner that maintains its integrity and chain of custody, making it admissible in legal proceedings and defensible during regulatory audits. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of evidence being challenged or dismissed due to improper handling. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that prioritizes immediate system restoration without proper evidence collection and documentation fails to meet legal requirements for evidence preservation. This can lead to the destruction of critical data, rendering it unusable for investigation or prosecution, and potentially violating regulations that mandate data retention and incident reporting. An approach that relies solely on volatile memory dumps without considering the broader forensic implications, such as the state of the live system or the potential for evidence alteration during the dump process, is insufficient. It overlooks the need for a comprehensive forensic image and a detailed understanding of the incident's timeline and scope, which are crucial for a thorough investigation and legal defense. An approach that involves sharing raw forensic data with unauthorized parties or without proper anonymization and legal authorization violates data privacy laws and could expose sensitive information, leading to significant legal penalties and reputational damage. It also compromises the integrity of the investigation by potentially introducing external influences or biases. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based, legally informed decision-making framework. This involves 1. Understanding the legal and regulatory landscape applicable to the incident, e.g., U.S. federal laws, industry-specific regulations. 2. Developing and adhering to a documented incident response plan that includes clear procedures for evidence preservation and chain of custody. 3. Prioritizing evidence collection and preservation before or concurrently with containment and eradication, where feasible. 4. Consulting with legal counsel and forensic experts when complex legal or technical issues arise. 5. Maintaining meticulous documentation of all actions taken, decisions made, and evidence handled. Question 15. When evaluating an incident involving a suspected data breach of customer personally identifiable information, PI, which of the following approaches best balances the immediate need for containment with the imperative to preserve evidence for forensic analysis and regulatory compliance? Option A. Immediately isolate affected systems to prevent further data exfiltration, then proceed with forensically sound evidence collection from these systems before initiating any remediation or restoration activities. Option B. Begin containment by disconnecting affected systems from the network, but delay detailed evidence collection until all systems are fully restored to normal operation. Option C. Prioritize restoring affected services as quickly as possible by wiping and rebuilding systems, assuming that the primary goal is to minimize business disruption. Option D. Focus solely on identifying and blocking the external threat vector, and only collect evidence if specifically requested by law enforcement after the incident is resolved. The correct answer is A. Immediately isolate affected systems to prevent further data exfiltration, then proceed with forensically sound evidence collection from these systems before initiating any remediation or restoration activities. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in incident response, balancing the need for rapid containment with the legal and regulatory obligations to preserve evidence. The incident involves a potential data breach affecting customer personally identifiable information, PI, which immediately triggers stringent data protection regulations. The pressure to restore services and mitigate further damage can lead to hasty actions that compromise the integrity of the investigation. The professional challenge lies in making informed decisions under duress, ensuring that immediate response actions do not inadvertently destroy crucial evidence needed for forensic analysis, regulatory reporting, and potential legal proceedings. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a phased response that integrates containment with evidence preservation. This aligns with best practices in digital forensics and incident response, as well as the principles embedded in data protection regulations like GDPR. Assuming a U.S. context for this exam, we would refer to relevant U.S. federal and state data privacy laws, such as HIPAA for health data, COPPA for children's data, or state-specific breach notification laws. The initial steps involve isolating affected systems to prevent further compromise without altering their state significantly. This is followed by a careful, forensically sound collection of evidence from affected systems before any remediation or restoration activities that might overwrite critical data. This methodical approach ensures that the investigation can proceed with reliable data, meeting legal requirements for evidence handling, and supporting accurate reporting to regulatory bodies and affected individuals. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that immediately wipes and rebuilds affected systems without prior forensic imaging or data preservation is professionally unacceptable. This action directly violates the principles of evidence preservation, making it impossible to determine the root cause, scope, or impact of the incident. It would also likely contravene data breach notification laws that require an accurate assessment of the compromised data. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize service restoration above all else, potentially leading to the deletion or alteration of logs and system states that contain vital forensic evidence. This demonstrates a failure to understand the interconnectedness of incident response, forensic investigation, and legal/regulatory compliance. Such an action could result in an incomplete or inaccurate understanding of the breach, leading to inadequate remediation and potential noncompliance with reporting obligations. Finally, an approach that delays evidence collection until after all containment and restoration efforts are complete is also flawed. While containment is crucial, delaying evidence collection can lead to the degradation or loss of volatile data, e.g., in-memory information, and the overriding of non-volatile data through normal system operations or initial remediation attempts. This delay hinders the ability to conduct a thorough and accurate forensic investigation, potentially impacting the organization's ability to meet its legal and regulatory obligations. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured incident response framework that emphasizes the contain, eradicate, recover phases, but critically integrates evidence preservation throughout. This involves developing and practicing an incident response plan that clearly outlines procedures for forensic imaging, chain of custody, and secure evidence storage. When an incident occurs, the decision-making process should involve assessing the immediate threat, identifying potential evidence sources, and prioritizing actions that balance containment with the need to preserve that evidence. Consulting with legal counsel and forensic experts early in the process is also vital to ensure all actions are compliant with relevant regulations and best practices. Question 16. Market research demonstrates that organizations are increasingly vulnerable to sophisticated cyber threats. During an active security incident involving a critical server, an incident handler must decide on the immediate course of action. The primary goal is to stop the ongoing damage and prevent further compromise. However, the organization also anticipates potential legal action and regulatory scrutiny, making the preservation of evidence paramount. The incident handler has identified the compromised server and has access to forensic tools. Which of the following approaches best balances the immediate need for containment with the long-term requirement for a forensically sound investigation? Option A. Directly access the compromised server to remove identified malware and restore it to a known good state. Option B. Immediately shut down the compromised server to prevent further data exfiltration and then proceed with forensic imaging. Option C. Initiate a full system backup of the compromised server before attempting any containment actions. Option D. Create a forensically sound image of the compromised server's disks and memory using write blockers before implementing any containment measures. Correct answer is B. Immediately shut down the compromised server to prevent further data exfiltration and then proceed with forensic imaging. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between the immediate need to contain a security incident and the legal and regulatory obligations to preserve evidence for potential future investigation and prosecution. The incident handler must balance operational urgency with meticulous adherence to forensic best practices and legal requirements, particularly concerning data privacy and chain of custody. Failure to do so can compromise the integrity of the investigation, lead to inadmissible evidence, and result in significant legal and financial penalties. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes the preservation of evidence in a forensically sound manner while simultaneously initiating containment. This aligns with the principles of digital forensics and incident response, mandated by frameworks relevant to the EC Council Certified Incident Handler certification, which implicitly requires adherence to established best practices for evidence handling. Documenting every step, using write blockers, and creating forensic images are critical to maintaining the integrity of the evidence, ensuring it is admissible in legal proceedings, and supporting a thorough investigation. This approach upholds the principle of least privilege in handling digital evidence and respects the chain of custody, which are fundamental to legal and ethical incident response. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that focuses solely on immediate system shutdown without proper forensic imaging or documentation risks destroying volatile data and altering the state of the compromised systems. This violates the principle of preserving evidence in its original state, making it difficult or impossible to reconstruct the incident or identify the root cause. It also fails to meet the requirements for a forensically sound investigation, which could lead to legal challenges regarding the evidence's admissibility. An approach that involves direct manipulation of live systems to remove malware without creating forensic copies before or during the process is highly problematic. This can overwrite critical forensic artifacts, alter timestamps, and destroy evidence of the attacker's actions. It bypasses the necessary steps for a forensically sound examination, potentially rendering any findings unreliable and inadmissible. An approach that delays the creation of forensic images until after initial containment efforts have been completed is also flawed. While containment is crucial, significant changes to the system state can occur during containment, potentially altering or destroying evidence that would have been captured in an initial forensic image. This delay compromises the integrity of the evidence by introducing a gap in the timeline of its preservation. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a scenario should employ a structured incident response methodology that integrates forensic preservation from the outset. This involves 1. Initial assessment and triage. Quickly understand the scope and impact of the incident. 2. Containment strategy. Develop a plan that balances rapid containment with evidence preservation. 3. Evidence collection. Prioritize forensically sound collection methods, including imaging volatile and non-volatile data. 4. Documentation. Meticulously record all actions taken, observations, and evidence collected. 5. Analysis. Analyze the collected evidence to determine the root cause, impact, and remediation steps. 6. Reporting. Prepare a comprehensive report detailing the incident, findings, and recommendations. This systematic approach ensures that operational needs are met while upholding legal and ethical responsibilities for evidence integrity. Question 17. The monitoring system demonstrates a pattern of unusual outbound network traffic originating from a critical financial server, coinciding with a recent phishing campaign targeting employees. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the incident response team? Option A. Discard the alert as a potential false positive, given the recent phishing campaign might have generated legitimate but unusual traffic patterns. Option B. Initiate a full forensic image of the affected server and begin detailed log analysis to identify the source and scope of the suspicious activity, while simultaneously implementing temporary network segmentation to isolate the server from the rest of the network. Option C. Escalate the alert to senior management and await further instructions before taking any action. Option D. Immediately shut down the affected server to prevent any further data exfiltration and to contain the potential breach. The correct answer is B. Initiate a full forensic image of the affected server and begin detailed log analysis to identify the source and scope of the suspicious activity, while simultaneously implementing temporary network segmentation to isolate the server from the rest of the network. Explanation: the monitoring system demonstrates a pattern of unusual outbound network traffic originating from a critical financial server, coinciding with a recent phishing campaign targeting employees. This scenario is professionally challenging due to the potential for a sophisticated attack that could compromise sensitive financial data, leading to significant financial losses, reputational damage, and regulatory penalties. The urgency to respond effectively while maintaining operational continuity and adhering to legal and ethical obligations is paramount. The correct approach involves a systematic incident response process that prioritizes containment and eradication while preserving evidence for forensic analysis. This aligns with best practices for incident handling, emphasizing a structured methodology to minimize damage and facilitate recovery. Specifically, in the context of financial regulations, such as those overseen by U.S. bodies like the SEC and FINRA, prompt and thorough investigation is mandated to protect investors and market integrity. The focus on evidence preservation is critical for compliance with data breach notification laws and potential legal proceedings. An incorrect approach that involves immediately shutting down the affected server without proper containment or evidence preservation would be professionally unacceptable. This action, while seemingly decisive, could destroy crucial forensic data, hindering the investigation and making it impossible to determine the full scope of the breach or identify the attack vector. This failure to preserve evidence violates the principles of sound incident response and could lead to non-compliance with regulatory requirements for breach investigation and reporting. Another incorrect approach, such as ignoring the alert due to a belief that it is a false positive without further investigation, is also professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to adhere to the principle of assume breach when suspicious activity is detected. Such negligence could allow an ongoing attack to escalate, leading to more severe consequences and potential regulatory sanctions for failing to implement adequate security controls and incident response procedures. A third incorrect approach, which involves sharing the raw log data with external parties without proper sanitization or legal authorization, poses significant privacy and security risks. This could inadvertently expose sensitive customer or proprietary information, leading to further breaches and legal liabilities. It also bypasses established protocols for evidence handling and disclosure, which are crucial for maintaining the integrity of the investigation and complying with data protection regulations. The professional reasoning process for handling such a situation should involve a clear incident response plan that includes steps for detection, analysis, containment, eradication, recovery, and post-incident review. This plan should be regularly tested and updated. When an alert is triggered, the incident handler must 1. Validate the alert through initial analysis. 2. Contain the incident to prevent further spread or damage, prioritizing critical systems. 3. Preserve evidence meticulously, following established forensic procedures. 4. Eradicate the threat. 5. Recover affected systems and data. 6. Conduct a post-incident review to identify lessons learned and improve security posture. Throughout this process, adherence to relevant regulatory frameworks and ethical guidelines is non-negotiable. Question 18. Benchmark analysis indicates that during a critical security incident, a key log file containing authentication attempts was inadvertently overwritten due to a scheduled system maintenance task that was not properly paused. The incident response team is now faced with a situation where the original log data is partially lost. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the incident handler? Option A. Immediately engage digital forensic specialists to attempt recovery of the overwritten log file and isolate the affected system to prevent further data alteration. Option B. Report the incident as unrecoverable due to data loss and close the investigation without further attempts at data recovery. Option C. Proceed with the investigation using only the remaining incomplete log data, assuming the overwritten portion is irretrievably lost. Option D. Delete the overwritten log file and replace it with a new, clean log file to ensure system stability and prevent future issues? The correct answer is A. Immediately engage digital forensic specialists to attempt recovery of the overwritten log file and isolate the affected system to prevent further data alteration. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in incident response where a critical piece of evidence, a log file, is inadvertently overwritten. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for thorough investigation and evidence preservation with the operational realities of system maintenance and the potential for data loss. The pressure to quickly restore services can conflict with the meticulous requirements of digital forensics and legal admissibility. Careful judgment is required to determine the best course of action that minimizes impact while maximizing the chances of recovering usable information and adhering to established protocols. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes the preservation of any remaining fragments of the log file and the immediate engagement of forensic specialists. This aligns with the principles of digital forensics and incident response frameworks, which emphasize evidence integrity and chain of custody. By isolating the affected system and initiating forensic analysis, the incident handler ensures that any recoverable data is handled in a manner that maintains its admissibility in potential legal or disciplinary proceedings. This proactive step respects the regulatory requirements for evidence handling and demonstrates due diligence in the investigation process, even when faced with data loss. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately deleting the overwritten log file and replacing it with a new, clean file. This action constitutes spoliation of evidence, a serious ethical and regulatory violation. It directly obstructs the investigation by destroying potentially crucial information, even if it appears corrupted. This failure to preserve evidence can have severe legal repercussions and undermine the credibility of the incident response team and the organization. Another incorrect approach is to proceed with the investigation using only the remaining, incomplete log data without attempting any forensic recovery. While seemingly efficient, this overlooks the possibility that valuable information might still be recoverable from the overwritten sectors. It represents a failure to exercise due diligence in the investigative process and may lead to an incomplete or inaccurate understanding of the incident, potentially missing critical indicators of compromise or attacker actions. This can violate internal policies and best practices for incident handling. A third incorrect approach is to immediately report the incident as unrecoverable due to data loss without attempting any mitigation or forensic steps. This prematurely closes the investigation and fails to explore all avenues for evidence recovery. It demonstrates a lack of initiative and adherence to established incident response methodologies, which mandate thorough investigation and evidence preservation to the greatest extent possible. This can be seen as a dereliction of duty and a failure to meet professional standards. Professional reasoning. When faced with potential evidence loss, incident handlers should follow a structured decision-making process. First, assess the immediate impact and contain the incident. Second, prioritize the preservation of any potentially affected data, even if it appears damaged. Third, engage specialized forensic resources to attempt recovery and analysis. Fourth, document all actions taken, including any data loss and the steps taken to mitigate it. Finally, consult with legal counsel and relevant stakeholders regarding the implications of data loss on the investigation and reporting. This systematic approach ensures that all regulatory and ethical obligations are met, and the investigation is conducted with the highest degree of professionalism and integrity. Question 19. Governance review demonstrates that critical log files related to a recent security incident were inadvertently overwritten during an emergency system patch deployment intended to mitigate a separate vulnerability. The incident handler is tasked with determining the root cause and scope of the original security incident. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure a thorough and defensible investigation? Option A. Proceed with a high-level assessment of the incident's impact and focus solely on patching the vulnerability that led to the emergency deployment, disregarding the original security incident's investigation. Option B. Attempt to manually reconstruct the overwritten log data based on system activity logs and network traffic captures to fill the information gap. Option C. Immediately initiate a comprehensive forensic investigation of the affected system and any available backups or shadow copies to reconstruct the incident timeline and gather all possible evidence, while meticulously documenting the data loss and its implications. Option D. Prioritize restoring the affected system to its pre-incident state and consider the original incident uninvestigible due to the loss of critical log data. Correct answer is C. Immediately initiate a comprehensive forensic investigation of the affected system and any available backups or shadow copies to reconstruct the incident timeline and gather all possible evidence, while meticulously documenting the data loss and its implications. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in incident response where a critical piece of evidence, the log file, is inadvertently overwritten. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for thorough investigation and evidence preservation with the operational realities of system maintenance and the potential for data loss. The pressure to quickly restore services can conflict with the meticulous requirements of digital forensics and legal admissibility. The incident handler must navigate this tension while adhering to established protocols and legal frameworks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves immediately initiating a formal incident response process, focusing on evidence preservation and forensic analysis of the compromised system and any available backups or shadow copies. This aligns with the principles of digital forensics and the requirements for maintaining the integrity of evidence for potential legal proceedings or internal disciplinary action. In the context of the 212-89 EC Council Certified Incident Handler Curriculum, this emphasizes the importance of following established incident response methodologies, which prioritize evidence collection and chain of custody, even when faced with data loss. The focus is on reconstructing the event using all available means, including system logs, network traffic captures, and forensic imaging, to determine the scope, cause, and impact of the incident. Incorrect approach is analysis, an approach that prioritizes immediate system restoration without attempting to recover or analyze the overwritten log file, fails to uphold the principles of evidence preservation. This could lead to the loss of crucial information necessary to understand the attack vector, identify the attacker, and prevent future occurrences. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for due diligence in incident investigation. Legally, it could render any subsequent findings inadmissible if the integrity of the investigation is compromised due to the destruction of primary evidence. Another incorrect approach would be to simply declare the incident uninvestigible due to the lost log file and move on. This neglects the responsibility to conduct a thorough investigation to the best of one's ability. It bypasses the opportunity to utilize other forensic techniques and available data sources. This demonstrates a lack of professional commitment and could expose the organization to further risks if the root cause is not understood. A third incorrect approach might involve fabricating or reconstructing log data to fill the gap. This is a severe ethical and legal violation, constituting evidence tampering. It undermines the credibility of the entire incident response process and can have severe legal repercussions for the individual and the organization. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such situations by first activating their organization's incident response plan. This plan should outline steps for evidence preservation, containment, eradication, and recovery. When faced with data loss, the focus shifts to maximizing the recovery of any residual data and utilizing alternative forensic methods. This involves documenting all actions taken, including the circumstances of the data loss, and clearly communicating the limitations of the investigation to stakeholders. A structured decision-making process would involve 1. Assessing the impact of the lost data. 2. Identifying all potential sources of alternative evidence. 3. Documenting the forensic process meticulously. 4. Consulting with legal counsel if the incident has potential legal ramifications. 5. Reporting findings with clear caveats regarding data limitations. Question 20. The efficiency study reveals that the incident response team's current protocol for handling a confirmed data breach involving customer PII lacks a clear, legally compliant procedure for data encryption and secure notification. Given a scenario where a critical customer database has been accessed by an unauthorized party, what is the most appropriate immediate course of action to align with U.S. federal and state data breach notification laws and best practices for incident handling? Option A. Publicly disclose the breach immediately to inform customers and the public, while simultaneously initiating technical containment measures. Option B. Focus solely on eradicating the threat and restoring system integrity, deferring any notification or data protection measures until the technical investigation is fully complete. Option C. Immediately encrypt all customer PII data that may have been accessed, initiate a forensic investigation to determine the full scope of the breach, and prepare a draft notification for affected individuals and relevant regulatory bodies, adhering to all statutory timelines and content requirements. Option D. Begin notifying affected individuals and regulatory bodies with preliminary information, without first encrypting the compromised PII or conducting a thorough scope assessment. The correct answer is C. Immediately encrypt all customer PII data that may have been accessed, initiate a forensic investigation to determine the full scope of the breach, and prepare a draft notification for affected individuals and relevant regulatory bodies, adhering to all statutory timelines and content requirements. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a critical gap in the incident response plan concerning the handling of personally identifiable information, PI, during a data breach. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires immediate action to mitigate harm while adhering to stringent data protection regulations, specifically the U.S. framework governing data privacy and breach notification. The incident handler must balance the urgency of containment and eradication with the legal obligations to protect sensitive data and inform affected individuals and authorities. The correct approach involves a thorough assessment of the PII involved, immediate implementation of encryption and access controls to protect the compromised data, and strict adherence to the notification timelines and content requirements mandated by relevant U.S. federal and state laws. This represents best professional practice because it prioritizes data minimization, security, and transparency, aligning with the principles of data protection by design and default, and fulfilling legal and ethical duties to individuals whose data has been exposed. It demonstrates a commitment to responsible incident handling that minimizes reputational damage and legal repercussions. An incorrect approach that involves immediate public disclosure without a proper assessment of the PII compromised and the scope of the breach fails to meet regulatory requirements. This could lead to panic, exploitation by malicious actors, and significant legal penalties for non-compliance with breach notification laws. Another incorrect approach, which is to delay notification to affected individuals and regulatory bodies until all technical remediation is complete, even if it exceeds statutory deadlines, violates the spirit and letter of data protection laws that emphasize timely communication to allow individuals to take protective measures. A third incorrect approach, focusing solely on technical containment without considering the legal and ethical implications of PII exposure, overlooks the broader responsibilities of an incident handler and can result in severe regulatory sanctions and loss of trust. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the regulatory landscape applicable to the data and the organization. This involves identifying the types of data involved, particularly PII, and the specific legal obligations for breach notification and data protection. The next step is to conduct a rapid but comprehensive assessment of the incident's scope and impact, focusing on the compromised data. Based on this assessment, a response strategy should be developed that prioritizes data security, containment, and compliance with notification requirements. Continuous communication with legal counsel and relevant stakeholders is crucial throughout the process to ensure all actions are legally sound and ethically responsible.